Take the time to open. We always like to open up in prayer, so I'm going to start off in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for bringing us here tonight. Thank you for ordering our steps. We ask that all things that happen, that you know the path that you have for each and every person here, and that those things would be ordered and would bring you glory. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. FDF, in case anyone doesn't know, is a conservative Christian organization founded in the name of Frederick Douglass, who, upon raising above slavery, went on to become an advisor to President Lincoln and 2 other presidents. He was also the first black man nominated for vice president and president of the United States. A man of intellectual that is unparalleled in history. I would like to quickly tell you about a couple of our upcoming events. On the 29th of October, we'll be showing the film Fear of a Black Republican here at Joy Community Church. The director, Kevin Williams, will be here to take questions afterwards. And we'd like to thank Joy for letting us use this space for the event. You can buy a ticket to the Fear of the Black Republican tonight if you wanted to. It's $7, or at the door it's $10. You can also go online. There's some posters back there. If you have a library, anywhere that you might be able to hang it up, you can take one and pass that around. On November 12th, we're also doing, in conjunction with the Place of Hope, the Freedom Forum for Youth Excellence. We'll be taking 50 of the most at-risk girls here in Rochester and walking with them for a whole year. It's a program we're bringing in. Our first sponsor, our speaker, will be November 12th, rented out the Damon City Center. Star Parker is the keynote speaker for that event. You can sponsor a girl if you have a business, or we have a lot of churches and different organizations that sponsor a girl, like I said. And if you want more information about that, we can let you know. The sponsors, starting at $250, it gives you 2 tickets to a dinner gala event that will be there that evening as well. If you want to just have dinner with Star, you can buy a ticket. It's $50 and she'll be speaking at the dinner event as well. Let's see. Because we at the Frederick Douglass Foundation are an organization that seeks to educate the population, I want to read you a passage by a former Democrat and Chronicle writer, Michael Walsh. This was posted on October 18th on the Corner blog, National Review. His comments were about Saul Alinsky's methods being used here in Rochester in the 1960s, and now again today throughout the country with the Occupy Wall Street protests that are daily growing more and more violent. For those unfamiliar with Alinsky, he was a communist, Russian organizers in the 50s and 60s, trying to weaken the United States from within on behalf of the masters of the USSR. Hillary Clinton did her thesis on the man, and Barack Obama used to teach his methods of community organizing in Chicago. So here's Michael Walsh, what he had to say. Excuse me. In case you haven't figured it out by now, what's going on in Washington and across the country is the full Alinsky, brought to you by the same malcontents who have been awaiting this moment for more than 40 years. It's been a long time wandering in the desert for the 60s left. But this is their moment, this is their time, as somebody or other from Palamus once said. The great man himself was already there, attending the organization for 2 years by the time I got to Rochester, New York in the fall of 1967 to attend the Eastman School of Music. His target was the Eastman Kodak Company, and his human battering rams were members of the city's black community, which had exploded in riots in 1964. In the wake of the unrest, Rochester was already visibly on the side of Alinsky when Alinsky got there, whipsawing both the black neighborhoods, which had largely been the old Jewish neighborhoods, and useful idiots of the Rochester Area Council of Churches to hack away the city's then prosperous business community and its waspy leadership. Alinsky rode into town on a one-trick pony that the left has since turned into a war horse. Agitate one side's grievances and appeal to the other side's decency of gullibility in order to provoke the establishment, whose reaction will unite the other two. Then the community organizer charges in on his nag-turned steed and proceeds to set the rot in motion under the banner of progress. It is the very devil's work, and Alinsky certainly made a splendid devil, unconspicuous and whiny at the time, and always casting himself as the real heroic victim, standing for progress, when in fact he was particularly nasty, cowardly, kind of cultural vandal. Here he is talking to Playboy about the days in Rochester. Alinsky, quote unquote. In the aftermath of the riots, the Rochester Area Council of Churches, a predominantly white body of liberal clergymen, invited us in to organize the black community and agreed to pay all of our expenses. We said then we didn't speak for the blacks and we wouldn't come in unless we were invited in by the black community itself. At first, there seemed little interest in the ghetto, but once again, the old reliable establishment came to the rescue by overreacting, cutting its own throat. The minute the invitation was made public, the town's power structure exploded in paroxysms of rage. The mayor joined the city's two newspapers, both part of the conservative Gannett chain, in denouncing me as a subversive hate monger. Radio station Wham delivered 1-minute editorial tirades against me, talking about Alinsky, and told the ministers who'd invited me that from now on they'd have to pay for their own previously free Sunday morning airtime. A settlement house that had pledged its support to us was promptly informed by the community chest that its funds would be cut off if it went ahead. The board retracted its support, with several members resigning. The establishment acted as if the golden horde of Khan was camped on its doorstep. If you listen to public comments, you'd have thought I spent my spare time feeding poisoned milk bones to seeing eye dogs. It was the nicest thing they could have done for me, of course. Overnight, the black community broke out of its apathy and started clamoring for us to come in. As one black man told me later, I just wanted to see somebody who could freak those mothers out like that. Black civil rights leaders, local block organizations, and ministers, plus 13,000 individuals signed petitions asking me to come in. And what kind of support? And with that kind of support, we were rolling. I assigned my associate, Ed Chambers, as chief organizer in Rochester and prepared to visit the city myself once his efforts were underway. Playboy, was your reception as hostile as your advanced publicity? Alinsky, oh yeah, I wasn't disappointed. I think they would have quarantined me at the airport if they could have. When I got off the plane, a bunch of local reporters were waiting for me, keeping the same distance as tourists in a leper colony. I remember one of them asking me what right I had to start meddling in the black community after everything Kodak had done for quote-unquote them, and I replied, maybe I am uninformed, but as far as I know, the only thing Kodak has done on race issues in America is to introduce color film. My relationship with Kodak was to remain on that plane. Most of this is hokum, of course, designed to stick a papier-mâché halo atop Old Nick's horns. The Gannett newspaper, the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle, for which I worked as a police reporter, federal court reporter, a classical music critic from 1972 to 1977, and the Times-Union were harmless, inoffensive, white guy, country club publications. They did some excellent journalism. The Times-Union won a Pulitzer in 1972 for its coverage of the Attica prison riots, and a whole bunch of folks graduated from Rochester and went on to do great things. The notion that Rochester reporters would treat Alinsky like a leper is a typical leftist lie. Setting the template, Alinsky organized a front group called Fight, the martial imagery so beloved of the peaceful and tolerant left always makes me laugh. Freedom, integration, God, honor today. That's what the fight started for. And then they introduced guilt-ridden white liberals to join the fight, the Friends of Fight, to finance the scam. The reference to God, coming from a man who in part dedicated his book, Rules for Radicals, to Lucifer, was a nice touch. But the key to Alinskyism is the whipsaw, a constantly shifting moral center that can argue both sides of the issue at the same time. Thus, Alinsky's love child, Barack Obama, can boast of being rich and siding with the 99% simultaneously. Attack him as one, and he'll say he's really the other. Just look at the Obama administration is doing now, claiming to suspend the Class Act of Obamacare, which is the long-term care aspect, while the president swears to defend it. Intellectually absurd, but emotionally perfect pitch. Barry, as the eternal outsider, battling the dark forces. For Alinsky, always needs a villain, even if the villain is Alinsky himself. But what do you expect from the political philosophy that claims up is really down, in is really out, and black is really white? Alinsky forces the right to always be on defense, shadowboxing in the halls of mirrors against a foe whose moral turpitude it refuses to credit. If Alinsky stood for anything, it was, like Lucifer, destruction. The left's rage is animated by its lust for demolition, and the sooner the right stops accepting its pretenses, the quicker the real battle can be engaged. Take Rochester today. Take a glorious moment and hard look and creativity, the city that gave the world Kodak, Xerox, Bosch and Lomb, Ragu spaghetti sauce, Susan B. Anthony, Frederick Douglass, George Eastman, the country's best pizza, Jenny Cream, and Nick Tahoe's garbage plate is just another post-Alinsky ruin, shorn of its heritage and condemned by its weather. If you want to see the future of America under the shade of Saul Alinsky, Rochester is a good place to start. As for Alinsky, somebody should turn the tables. Instruct the right how to use the principles against him. It's the only way to beat his ghost and his hate-filled love children. And that's the end of Michael Walsh's post. I wanted to highlight the piece because it explains a lot. I wasn't around in 1967, but Alinsky was. So when addressing the candidates tonight, I thought you might want to keep in mind what has happened to the black community in Rochester since the 60s, because we have to acknowledge the black community isn't better than it was back then when Alinsky came in to organize it. Unemployment is through the roof, functional illiteracy is even higher, abortion, unwed mothers, one of the worst in the country. Our goal is to help lift people out of poverty by teaching them to use their own God-given talents to do so. Part of that is to turn off the resentment and entitlement mentality that Alinsky instilled in them. The resentment is what holds them back and masks their talents, and that's what perpetuates poverty. Are these candidates going to continue to enable the collective defeatism in our communities in order to use the resentment to maintain power over them, or are they willing to stand up and offer an alternative? One last thing about tonight, we'll go through, give each candidate time to speak, and then you can go ahead and we'll take a couple questions, and then afterwards, which I don't think I told you, there's a basket that has numbers. After they're all done speaking, we'll open up and you guys can ask them any questions that you'd like. And we're just kind of going to go in order by the numbers picked so that it's easy and we don't have to keep track of whose hands are raised up every time. And then one last thing, by becoming a member of FDF, you become directly involved in shaping the important issues to keep our community strong and ensure voices are heard. Our grassroots network of community activists go across the country from New York to Hawaii. New York is the youngest of the groups. This is our 1-year anniversary month. The foundation could not have fulfilled its commitment to helping every citizen have a voice in the government. Without our members, the Frederick Douglass Foundation is proud to inform you that collectively our hands on work to safeguard the Republic and educate the masses has led to an increase in civic engagement. This year, we held our 3rd annual Leadership Summit in Washington, D.C., produced the 2011 edition of the Freedom Calendar. There's one back there, you can go ahead and take one. We've been cited in a number of media articles across the country, included and the official documents which led to the passing of Arizona's Bill 2443, which criminalized abortions based on the sex or race of a fetus. Your participation and dues make these and other valuable services possible. Every member strengthens the Foundation's political clout. Even if you don't have time to personally be involved, your membership and support the actions of the Foundation members who work for better government. As a member, you make everything we do possible, so I hope you consider becoming a member today and help us continue to grow. You can also feel free to make donations, buy a t-shirt. We have some t-shirts that we just made, they're $25. I also want to take time to humbly thank those of you who are already members. And regarding this night's events, we'll start off with Andre Barnett, and he can come up and I guess tell you about himself however he would like.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so happy to be here tonight. Every time I come to one of the events that Chaplain Kreutz has and her husband Matthew, I learn something every single time. It's a wonderful, wonderful environment that they actually nurture. And so if you're going to become a part of this foundation, I think you should do it as soon as possible and attend as many events as possible. You'll always learn something. My name is Andre Barnett. I'm running for President of the United States. Now, I usually get the surprised look from many people whenever I say that. It comes across and they say, "Oh my God, who are you? Where'd you come from? What do you have that other people don't have?" Well, let me ask you a question. Let's see what your candidates that are out there in the field have right now. What are they doing for you? What solutions do they have? If you look at my website, which I'm sure many of you have not as of yet, you're going to find something a little bit different. You're going to find detailed solutions. Solutions that actually work. Solutions that have been studied. And solutions that didn't come from a bank, another company that has interest in what I have to say, or another politician that needs leverage. They came directly from me. From me, my own studies, and my own team. We put the solutions together because of everyday life. People that we talk to, people like you. You're not going to see any notes from me. I don't like scripted speeches. I don't like people putting words in my mouth, and I don't speak for anyone else. If you see somebody with words in their mouth, usually that's a puppet, and that's not me. You're going to see I speak for myself. I spoke with one young lady just a little bit earlier, and you're going to notice I don't walk on eggshells. I don't use race, education, or the lack thereof, or my economic state. That is not a scenario by which we can use as a crutch for any legislation or for any lack that we have in our own lives. We have the ability to rise above it, and that's what we have to do. Let me give you just a little example that you'll find on my site. And this actually goes to the healthcare, something that's a big issue today in the economy. Everything is all-encompassing. Everything touches every other part of our economy. So if you're looking at healthcare, you're still going to be dealing with taxes, job growth, the housing industry, you name it, it's all connected. We can't continue to try to attack this piece by piece. It has to be an all-encompassing solution. And I'll give you, a lot of people say, well, I don't really understand how that works. Well, let me ask you something. If we don't have any jobs, yet we have a deficit, and we're trying to trying to recover with tax revenue, who's going to pay the taxes? Is it going to be the extremely poor? No. Why not? Because they don't have any money to pay. They're not making enough. And 50% of them, they don't pay anything anyway. All right? It's going to be the middle class. It's going to be the people that are working everyday jobs, going to work in factories, if those factories are still around, going to work at Walmart, at your restaurants, department stores. These are people that are paying all the taxes. Yes, your high-end or your upper scale people, or what they like to call the top class, which I don't like using the class structure because I think it's demeaning. I think we're just all Americans. So, the top class, what they say, that upper 1%, they're saying they're paying most of the taxes. I have a hard time believing that. I think it's the middle class and the top class that pay on both. But let me tell you how we actually restructure this economic infrastructure to make it work for us. And this is a model that you'll find on my page. Number one, we're going to have to lower the corporate tax rate. It has to be done. We do have the highest corporate tax rate in the world at 35%. Corporations have already stated that if we lower this tax rate to 15%, they'll start bringing jobs back, jobs that we need. And these are going to be manufacturing jobs that we don't have anymore. And I know this. My father worked in a factory for years, for my entire life. When I left, luckily, I left before all of this came about, and his job went away. His entire factory shut down. Zanesville, Ohio. I know you guys were talking about all the animals that were just out in Zanesville, Ohio. That's probably the only time you've ever heard it other than when I said it. But I'm from Zanesville, Ohio. Brockway Glass was a thriving business. It did all the Heinz bottles, a lot of the alcohol bottles, everything you can think of that came in glass was at Owens Brockway Glass. I turned 18, I left home. Two years after I left, Owens Brockway Glass was gone. Every one of those people lost their jobs. My father retired shortly after I left, so he didn't hit that, but everyone else did. So I see those people now, and I go home every once in a while just to talk to them and see how they're doing. And their standard of living has diminished so greatly, that many of them are just looking for their next either welfare check, they're looking for the next Wendy's to pop up so they can try to get a job there. There's no jobs left. Nothing. Could you imagine being 40, 45 years old and your life's ambition is to work at Wendy's? I don't think that's part of the American dream. Can you imagine being 60 years old and your life ambition is to work at Walmart? I don't think that's the American dream. Right now, I'm just going to turn this around. If I could give you a plan right now that says we can provide or we can nurture an environment that's going to gross 30 to 40 million jobs in 4 to 8 years, would that be something you're interested in? If I could give you a plan that says, hey, you know what? There's a way to cover more people with health care than any other plan that's out there right now. And it's not going to fall on you to pay for it. Would you be interested in that? Don't get me wrong, it's not socialism. I'm not talking about that. What I am talking about is free market. Capitalism. That's what we're based on. But it's capitalism with minimal government, and it's free capitalism. Not crony capitalism. Not slighted towards those companies that we believe are going to benefit us the most. So, I lowered the tax rate, the corporate tax rate, to 12%. I've spoken with corporations already. They're agreeing to bring jobs back. Now, we have an infusion. And I'm going to say, I'm really going to be very, very conservative on the numbers. Let's say we only have 15 million jobs. 15 million jobs. I don't think Barack Obama's ever going to even let those numbers slip out of his mouth ever. 15 million jobs. That would be what we lost probably with Barack Obama. And every other candidate that's out there right now, they're saying that their highest numbers are 6 to 7 million over 4 to 6 years. We're talking about 30 to 40 million jobs by taking on this plan. Now, lowering it to 12%, the corporate tax rate, that's only the first part. That gets people back to work. That gives us a huge infusion of tax revenue. Tax revenue that we need. We so need right now. That also allows us to bring something else to the table. Speaking with some of the corporations and some of their heads, I asked them, would you be willing to pay the premiums of their health care, of your employees and your employees' families, if we would take your tax rate down to 9%? Overwhelmingly, they said yes. So, now we're talking about not free health care. I don't believe in free health care, but health care for more people than any plan could cover through the corporations. Well, wait a minute. What's government got to do with this? Nothing. We remove government from the picture. We let the corporations negotiate the rates that they're going to pay for those premiums. That means the government has no say. We're not at the bargaining table. The corporations are. Government will never be able to negotiate as good as any of our private sector businesses. Never. They never have been. And that's not the business we're supposed to be in. There's nothing in the Constitution that said the government should be regulating your health care. Anywhere in there. And if you can find it, let me know. I'll be glad to, take that correction. But I don't think you're going to find it. So, now we're talking about everyone. Everyone that's working having health care. All of your family members. How does the government benefit? How do we minimize the government? Well, since we've decreased the size of the government by taking them off of the negotiating table, we don't need those people anymore. We don't need them. That's a waste of money. It's a waste of your taxpayer dollars. I don't believe in waste. So we get rid of it. We get rid of those groups. All we need are the same people that currently document employees. That's all we need. Because they can also document that that company is providing the health care that they promised they were going to provide. That's all we need. The government takes those rates, we put them into our GSA fund. And if you guys aren't familiar with GSA, it's the Government Services Acquisition. It's the same thing we use for all the other government services that we acquire. If you are information technology, Department of Defense contracting, plumbing, just general contracting, we go through the GSA. And that means the lowest rate that any company publishes or offers to any individual or any other company is what they have to give to the government. That's what they have to offer. So that takes all negotiations off the table. Corporations that have negotiated those rates for premiums, they list them in the GSA. The government uses those numbers for their Medicare, Medicaid, and just so you know, on the average, you're talking about for Medicare and Medicaid, $2,500 a month just for their basic medical coverage from the government. So how many people are on Medicare or Medicaid? Anybody have a wild guess? Over 50 million. 50 million people on Medicare and Medicaid. If you can cut those numbers to $500, which is what most corporations pay when they are sponsoring health care, you've knocked out 3/4 of the cost right off the bat. So we're saving our taxpayers 3/4 of the amount of tax-paying dollars that are going in to medical expenses paid out by the government. That's the first part. Now, if we can do that, and just follow me here, if we can do that, and we apply that to every other sector, how much money do you think we save? Again, we're not piecemealing this. This is an all-encompassing solution. Some of these things are hard to fathom. As John Boehner said, how could you say something like this? We have a tax code in place. You're talking about destroying the entire tax code. What I'd have to say to that is, if you have a house, which is sort of like our tax code, you've got a house that's been infested with termites, tearing it down, And we have an earthquake hit right down the center, splits it in half. That house is coming down anyway. What are you going to do? You're going to put up some beams and try to prop it up for a little bit more time? Or are you going to go build a new house somewhere stable? 9 times out of 10, hopefully the smart people are going to build a new house somewhere stable. And that's what we need to do with our economic infrastructure. We have got to give it an overhaul. We have to rebuild it. We don't have time to try to put Band-Aids on it and prop it up. We've got to do something now. Don't let it fall on deaf ears. When I'm looking at each and every one of you in here tonight, I want you to think about the people that you're listening to on the television. All the candidates that you see, listen to what they're offering. Don't let it be like President Obama with lofty talk about it's going to be better when we get there. We don't know what it's going to be like yet, but when we get there, it'll be better. Listen to what they're saying. Think about what it means to you, what it means to your children. You've got to see that there's got to be a better way. America has always been exceptional. Everything about this country is exceptional. Every individual. You have the right and the power to change what goes on in government. But your power rests in the people that you put up there to represent you. And if those people that are representing you, that you put in place, don't have your ideals, don't have your best interests in mind, do you really think you're going to get what you need or want out of the government? Probably not. When I told you that the FDF was a great organization, it's because I believe that they are trying to educate people. And that's what we need. We need people to get interested in what's going on. Again, you guys are here tonight, so I know that this doesn't apply to you. But most people listen to CNN, Fox, MSNBC, Squawk Box, whatever that is. And they listen to these things, and this is where they get their viewpoints. This is what they believe. But they're not telling you everything. They're not telling you anything that hasn't been given to them by one sector of the government or the other. They give you talking points. You've got to educate yourselves. You have to take an interest in your own lives. Take an interest in this next election. Listen to the people that come out in front of you, that are pushing their ideas out there. See if there's any validity to it. See if it holds any weight. If you look at the, and I know you guys have heard it, the 999 plan by Kane. If you guys, how many of you guys support that? How many of you guys like that?
I do.
Okay. Let me ask you, did Kane draft that? And do you know exactly what's in that plan?
No one has looked at the plan in depth, and I'm certain he has a staff working on that.
Kane's plan was actually drafted by a banker.
Down the road.
Art Laffer.
We'll have a chance to do
Art
that
Laffer.
in great detail. I don't know what's in depth. Really don't.
You'll want to
So we
educate
can't
you.
say.
Be educated on it. It was actually drafted by a banker.
Well,
And it was given to him.
Staff.
Right. But it was given to it.
Well, we're going to take a close look at it.
Right.
And develop, and you're right.
But what we want to do, what we have to do, is look at who's drafting these plans for these guys. See what's in it. Because if it's beneficial to the bank, because it was drafted by a banker, do you really think he's going, it's like me coming to you saying, well, I'm going to write something for you, a law that restricts me from doing what I want to do, from having my own advantage. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Then if we look at the 59-point plan by Mitt Romney.
Too many points.
Too many points. It's very convoluted. However, if you read it, and I've gone through a bit of what he had in it, and I just got overwhelmed with anger after I read it for a little bit. I saw that it was saying, hey, you know what? What we have to do is we have to take away, we have to get rid of Medicare and Medicaid, go back to the Bush-era tax cuts, and that's great. That's great. But what about all those people that are depending on Medicare and Medicaid? I know too many of them. I talk to too many of them. One of the other things that didn't take into account are veterans and the adjusted pay that we need to have for them. I know them firsthand. I'm one of them. I see our service-disabled veterans. Again, I'm one of them. And let me give you one case in point. One gentleman who's asked me to assist with his campaign. He's a disabled veteran. He has, I believe it's stage 4 cancer. His medical benefits from the military and his Medicare will not cover the cost. So he's being turned away. This is a man who actually fought in not one but 2 wars. And he can't get the health care he needs today. That says something about this country. That says something about this nation. I think we really need to rethink, and please, by all means, educate yourselves. Be educated. Everything that I say to you, look into it. Everything that you see on my site, look into it. I welcome any feedback. Anyone that has an issue or thinks that they find something in my plan that discourages them, contact me. Contact me directly. And I address every situation, every question. And I'm happy to do so. The last thing that we need to know is that whoever you elect should not come across as the most powerful man in the country. Your president takes the office of the highest servant of the land. That's what he should see himself as, and that's what you should see him as, a servant of the people. He's got to do the will that you have for him to do, not his own. We should not try to force anything on our people. We're supposed to echo the voice of the people, and that's it. So, I'm going to cut off here. I know I've taken a lot of time, but I appreciate it. My name is Andre Barnett, and I'm running for President of the United States. Thank you.
Oh, wait.
I think you have some questions.
Well, I don't know. Does anybody have it? We'll take a couple now, and then they'll be at the end. Does anyone have a question for him? You can just come up here and ask him. Anyone? Yep.
Yeah, well, I don't necessarily have to come up there.
Okay.
But, what about the United States Constitution? Never once have you mentioned it.
That's a good question. I did not.
It
I
is a
try to
very
keep
good
things.
question.
I try to keep things concise. One of the things that I have said, we need to strip government of their bloated powers, strip it back to the framework of the Constitution. Our Constitution works fine. I've heard Obama say, as well as many other elected officials say, we need a new Constitution that actually addresses the issues of today. Our Constitution works fine. It always has, and it will, as long as we do not empower government past their limits. The framework was laid for a reason. We had the 3 branches of government, and they were separated from the states. The states had their own set of powers. We should not allow the government, the federal government, to intercede, or, to overstep their boundaries and begin to interfere with the state's powers. Many of the questions and many of the issues of today have nothing to do with federal powers. I hear about gay marriage. I hear about education. I hear about, oh boy, healthcare is just another one of those things that the federal government should not be regulating. None of these issues have to do anything with the federal government's powers. The Constitution strictly lays that out for us. So, as regarding the Constitution, I support the Constitution at its basic framework.
All right. And yeah, I'll take one more. Go ahead, Mike.
What's your position on national security? Are you for withdrawing out of all the different countries, or projecting power, or what's your position in that in terms of national security?
That's a really good question. National security, there's a lot of things to this, and I want to answer your question, but let me just take another part. Even from the jobs perspective, that's another issue of the national security that I've addressed in a couple of programs and in a couple of interviews. But as far as our troops in foreign countries, the first thing we have to realize is a lot of these countries we don't belong in. We had no stake in the game. The issue that I have with us putting our men and women in harm's way in countries where we don't belong is that it's needless bloodshed. If we look at Libya, we didn't belong there. We don't belong there. We shouldn't have even had anything to say about the NATO's actions there. We shouldn't be taking part with many of the NATO scenarios that take place. But because we have now began to allow ourselves to be really ruled by NATO, or the UN, I should say, excuse me, we're falling into a lot of pitfalls. We have various conflicts in, let's see, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya. We're still in Bosnia, in the former Yugoslavia, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel for us to come out. If we leave these areas, many of them, they're going to fall right back into civil war. They've been fighting for a long time. We can't stop it, and I don't see why we're trying to force it.
Thank you so much. What we're going to do is I'm going to call Drew Beeman. If we're going to give Andre Barnett a round of applause, and then we'll call him back
Hey, just so everybody knows, we met with Andre a few months ago for several hours, and I wrote up a nice article on, called Meet Andre Barnett, and we'll repost that on the fdfny.org blog, so that if you'd like to get an objective opinion of his policy and whatnot, like I said, I spent hours with him and asking questions, and we'll put that on the
We gave you the
blog.
good and the bad. Not that we slammed him a lot, but there were some things, just so you know. It is objective, is what I'm just trying to say, is that
Right.
we didn't, we met with him and the things that we agreed
Obviously,
with.
check out his website too to learn more,
Yeah.
but
All right, and Drew Beeman, if you want to come up, he's going to give a short presentation, then you can ask some questions.
Hi, my name is Drew Beeman. I'm running for county legislature in the 25th district. Does anyone here know where the 25th is, or do you live in the 25th? Anyone? It's 490 is the northern border, Elmwood Avenue is the southern border, South Avenue in the South Wedge neighborhood is the eastern border, and the western border is Genesee Street. So if you live near any of those areas, Cornhill, South Wedge, then you're in the 25th district. Mr. Barnett was talking at the end of his speech. It kind of set me up for what I was going to talk about a little bit. He mentioned something about the president being the highest office or the highest servant of the people. That's one of the major things I've been talking about in my campaign, because we have a huge divide between our elected officials and the people. And I like to say the people a lot with a capital P, because that is where the power is supposed to be. And unfortunately, our government, like he talked about, has gone way beyond the Constitution, and it's gone way beyond being of the people and for the people and by the people. I think we have a real problem with that, and I think it's not only reflected in certain attitudes. I think a lot of people are getting very tired of career politicians who are sold out to their special interests and tickle people's ears and tell them what they think they want to hear, and then do absolutely nothing for the people. And they do absolutely nothing to empower the people. In fact, they probably do the complete opposite. And that's one of the things I've even found going door to door and meeting the voters in my district, is a lot of people are really frustrated with that, and they see that very clearly. So one of the things I talk about in my campaign is I think that the first thing that we need to do to cut spending is to reduce the salaries of the elected officials. Wow, how am I ever going to get any of the elected officials to get behind that idea? I'm giving that out a lot, I'm talking about that a lot, but people are like, no, it's never going to happen. And they're probably right, it's probably not going to happen, I'll admit that right now. Because nobody is going to vote for that. However, if the people speak up and demand that, then maybe somebody will listen. Maybe not. We'll see. But the issue to me is that we're electing people who are beholden to special interest, who are just they're just puppets of the corporations, like he was talking about. And then, we have things like the LDC scandal that went down, where the deputy executive of the county stepped down and went and worked for the company after he pushed through legislation with no debate, and it was unanimously voted upon, which if I were in office at the time, I would have just in principle voted against it, just to be the one person who didn't take that falling down. Here's the thing, no debate, like where does that come from? Obviously backroom deals, and that's the other kind of thing that people are sick of. They're sick of scandals and backroom deals and things being just breezed right in and then coming back later and finding out, oh boy, this isn't saving the taxpayers, it's actually costing the taxpayers. This kind of thing goes on all the time at every level of government. And part of the reason for that is because we keep electing, sorry, anybody who likes these people, but we keep electing the same two parties into office over and over and over again, and nothing ever changes. Which is why I will not run as a Republican, I will not run as a Democrat. I'm running as the Libertarian Party candidate, because that's what I believe in. And I'm not going to sell out to corporate interests. Some people are afraid, libertarians, they support corporations, blah, blah, blah. And we support a free market, like what Mr. Barnett was talking about, that is unregulated. And I think that's one of the things that we need to do to bring jobs to Monroe County, is we need to deregulate as much as we can, make it easy for people to open businesses. We need to bring jobs back. We got a lot to do at the state level in order to do that. But we need to bring jobs here, and I think the only way we're going to do that is to reduce the tax burden and reduce the regulations on businesses. But back to what I was talking about earlier, I think one of the things that we're finding is that, if you look at the salaries of the elected officials, and you look at their attitudes of entitlement and their bloated egos and their inflated salaries, there's a huge divide between these so-called servants of the people and then the people themselves. Not only in the attitudes, but also in their income. The average citizen in Monroe County, the last statistic I could find, was $23,000 a year is the average, which is a little bit more than I make, actually, I'll admit that publicly. But it's, not very much. It's very hard to live on. Why are the servants of the people, our elected officials, making up to 4 to 5 times more than that while the people are suffering? And of course, they're going to vote to give themselves raises whenever they can, and they're going to just keep, the divide is just going to get bigger and bigger unless we can do something about it. So that's one of the things that I'd like to talk about a lot. I'm encouraging people to get out there and vote. I'm encouraging people to get involved in the process. I'm a preschool teacher. I'm not a career politician. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a doctor. I'm not some elitist. I'm just a normal guy who makes very little money. But I'm representing the working class in our country, or in our county. And I think that this is something that needs to go across the country. We need representatives in legislatures that represent the working class and represent the people. So some other things that I've been talking about is not seeing the people as ATM machines. We do not need to be nickel and dimed. We are taxed enough. We don't need to be policing in order to raise revenue. There's little tricks that police departments use, and I'm going to talk about the Sheriff's Department right now because that's where my jurisdiction is. I would have no say over the RPD. But police departments use little tactics like red light cameras because they can just mail you a ticket. They don't really have to do anything, which we found is actually increasing rear-end collisions. As well as I've heard a few stories of people getting tickets and they were never even in that neighborhood where the red light could have caught them. So either the technology is really not ready to clearly read license plates, or something else is going on. Not to mention, officers sitting under bridges waiting for speeders. Yes, speeding is a problem. Irresponsible drivers is a problem. Same thing with red lights. But I don't think we need to be policing in order to meet quotas, in order to raise revenue and meet budgetary, needs. There's a line in the budget this year, $620,000 will be raised by the Sheriff's Department through forfeiture. And if you're not familiar with what that is, there was an article, I think it was posted yesterday on Rochester homepage, I think it's Channel 8 News website page and Fox. There's a story, and at the very end the RPD admit to basically stealing jewelry from drug dealers. I don't know how jewelry has anything to do with the drugs that they're dealing or confiscating or whatever. But they're stealing people's property and using drugs as a reason to go in and do that. Now, I don't think we should be promoting drug use. Drugs are a horrible problem. I think it should be maybe more looked at like a health concern and not so much like a legal matter. Like as a libertarian, of course, I support ending the war on drugs. I'm only talking about marijuana. The county, the sheriff's department has been using county resources to go in and bust marijuana growing operations in Henrietta and other people and individuals who were growing maybe a plant or two in their home. And I started to question, why are they using county resources for state law? To enforce a state law? Well, come to find out they're looking to raise $620,000 this year in the budget through forfeiture, which is basically theft of people's possessions, whether those possessions had anything to do with the crime or not. And I think that's wrong. All these little ways that the government is nickel and diming us and just using, you know, regulation and policing in order to raise more revenue. I think that's wrong. So as far as a few other little issues, I do support the Second Amendment. I think if you can have a permit, which you go through a rigorous process to get, you can carry walking down the street, walking in front of children playing in their yard. You should be able to carry them in county parks, which the Republicans have backed down on that issue a lot. So I look like my time is about up anyway. So that's all for now. Thank you so much. Any questions? I will take a few questions because I do need to run to another event that I was not invited to, but it's in my district, so I should crash the party.
Okay, how do you feel about the, let's call them roadblock traffic stops, such as the one I went through where the state troopers were at the Browncroft entrance to 490?
Well, I wouldn't have much
Did you say-
jurisdiction over the state troopers. I do think that,
No, but I've seen the sheriff's office doing it too.
yeah, random roadblock stops, I believe, are technically illegal, but you know how they like to fudge things in that department to try to get away with whatever they're trying to get away with. I'm definitely against random, you know, stops like that, random blocks, especially if you notice that sometimes that kind of thing happens in particular neighborhoods. Usually neighborhoods, you know, I'm going to go there, but there's some racial profiling going on in police departments all over the county, and I think that needs to end. And you will see as well, I talk a little bit about the blue light cameras in the city. Now, there's nothing I can do about that as a county legislator. I do want to stop the spread outside of the city into the rest of the county of those, because those are also being targeted in certain neighborhoods, and I don't really think that's very fair to the people that live there. Unfortunately, a lot of people live there do want them and support them and feel safer, so I don't know how far I'm going to go with that issue. But, did that answer your question? And that's all.
Anyone else?
Just like
Richard?
I'd like to chime in and say roadblocks are illegal. Only if there is a crime taking place, then you can have a roadblock. Outside of that, it is against the law to have roadblocks.
I do know people that fight that in court often win. That's how much I know. They do fight that.
Illegal.
To probably just get you for inspection, right?
All right, thank you so much, Drew Beeman, everyone.
Hey, good luck, Drew. Nice meeting you.
Next, we have Rich Tyson. He's running for city council.
Thanks, Aisha. I don't think I'm going to need a microphone. Can you guys hear me? Okay, fantastic. I'm going to give you the quick introduction of myself. My name is Rich Tyson. I'm running in the East District for City Council, which is essentially this corner over here and southeast from this point. So it's all the Beechwood neighborhood. It's Cobbs Hill. Northwood Village. It's East Avenue, Park Avenue, down into Swillburg, and in this whole southeast chunk of the city. 29 years old. I just turned 29 about a week ago. And a couple years back, I got out of the military. I was in the United States Navy for 4 years. And when I came home, I was a childlike kid, born and raised. Don't hold it against me. But so I grew up on the west side of the city. When I got back home, I said I wanted to be in the part of the community where things are going on, where the museums are, there's nightlife, there's restaurants and entertainment. So I moved into the city, first into Northwind Village, and then 2 years ago this month, my wife and I bought a home in Cobbs Hill, down on San Gabriel Drive, just off of Highland and Wind Road. And we made the choice to stay in the city because it's the portion of our county and of our community here that really needs the most attention. It's the part that there's the concentrations of poverty. It's where the schools are failing our children and not the other way around. And it's really where we wanted to put our effort. We feel if we're going to be a part of this Monroe County community that we really need to take part in making sure that the entire thing is healthy. So we focused on staying in the city. And then that's why I'm running for city council. We've seen about my lifetime of one-party domination and their machine dominating the politics of Rochester. And I think you can see that in a lot of the northeast cities in this country. You know, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Syracuse, it happens all over the place. And I think to some of the reasons that you spoke about when you first got up here, Isha, as to how that happened and why we're in the position that we're in. And I think that Drew points out, makes a good point, that we do need to have a healthy minority party in the county legislature to hold the Republicans accountable. I'm a Republican. I enjoy having the majority there, but I wouldn't want to see only Republicans at the county level. It's not healthy to have one party. And we need to put a minority party back into the city of Rochester in order to have an opposing point of view, to have some diversity of opinions and ideas, and have that exchange take place in front of people, not just behind closed doors on university at Democratic headquarters, where these things are worked out before they hit the floor for us all to see what's going to pass that night at a city council meeting. So that's the motivation that I bring into running this race. I'm proud to say I've walked all but 3 streets in this district, and that is Park Avenue, just because there's a lot of apartments. I've been trying to get out there, but it's a difficult area. University and Alexander Street. But aside from that, I've walked every street in the Beechwood area, and there's people that are dealing with realities that I would have never guessed. And it really encourages me to keep doing this and to run and win. So the other thing I'd like to bring up too is that as this is a conservative-minded event, I think it's atrocious that we have these red light cameras in the city of Rochester. If the Republicans were in charge of the city of Rochester and we put these red light cameras up, we would see it all over the front page of the DNC and CNN, and everybody would be coming in and saying, look what the racist Republicans, look what they're doing. They're targeting communities of color, because that's the buzzword today, communities of color. I mean, I'm a color too, but apparently not the right color. But they're targeting communities of color and extracting money from the people that least can afford it. These things aren't in Pittsburgh. They're not in Henrietta. They're not on the west side. They're in the areas that we have the highest concentrations of poverty and minorities. So I don't know how the Democrats got away with it without anybody freaking out. I know I freaked out a little bit, and I've had people like Jim Lawrence at the Democrat Chronicle tell me it's for safety, and that we need to increase safety for communities of color in the city. And I call BS on it, because I think it is. But it's atrocious what they're getting away with, and we need to get a minority party into the city, somebody who's outside of the machine, that is willing and able to stand up and call follow when it is. And lastly, I'll leave you with this, is, like I said, I'm 29 years old. I want to know that this community is going to foster and nurture the ability for me to personally grow, for my wife and I to grow as a couple, and to hopefully have a family in. We're exporting more people than we are goods and services. People are leaving, and the people that can't afford are the ones that are left struggling to eke out an opportunity for themselves. And unfortunately, we find all too often that opportunity ends up being on the wrong side of the law, because they don't see another way out. So I want this community to foster my personal growth and my family's growth, and I want it for all of you guys, and I want for everybody in here who's a parent to not end up being the typical Rochester parent, meaning your kids live someplace else, and you see them at Christmas time and maybe Thanksgiving if you're lucky, because they had to go someplace else to find their own a place that will facilitate their growth. I think it's government's job to get out of the way and provide a nice foundation for people to build up from. So I'll be happy to take some questions if you've got any, but that's who I am, that's why I'm running, and whether I win or lose this year, you're going to see me again, because I am not sitting down after November 8th this year for sure. But anybody have any questions? Mr. Wright?
What you do different, one thing that is not done now by the current group of people running city council, what's the one thing that you do different?
First of it, I think, is just engaging with people from all backgrounds. Unfortunately, the people that are in charge and in power now only have to go out and talk to you if you have a D next to your name. Because if you can't vote for them in their primary, they don't have to listen to you, and they're not. They're not listening to you. If you see my key card that says we're heading in the wrong direction and we're not being listened to, and I'm assuming most people in this room are non-Democrats, I could be wrong, but if you don't have a D next to your name, your opinion doesn't matter in the city of Rochester, because if you're not helping them in the primary, which is where these things are decided, sorry. So that's one thing, is doing what I've done in this campaign and will continue to going forward, is walking these streets. I think it's important for elected officials to get out and knock on doors, even when you're not running a race, to get out and say, hey, here's a report card. How am I doing? What can I do better for you? Back to that servant mentality. So I think it's just really engaging with people from all walks of life and all spectrums, not just the people that I think are going to throw a few dollars to me in the next election, and not just people I think that are going to vote for me in a primary. Any other questions at all? Come on, you gotta give me another tough question.
I know.
This is pretty easy.
Question?
Yeah, you know, the whole issue about the city school district and the mayor taking it over and, you know, now it's been like bookshelved. What's you know, how does city council influence you being in there, influence
What the
debate on
governance structure
education?
looks like? You know, I think it's a great question. Thanks for asking. You know, it's something, during the mayoral control debate, I was on the board of contributors at the DNC, and when then Mayor Duffy came in and told us that mayoral control was going to be the answer to all of our problems, I said, how? Just tell me how. I'll be happy to support it if it's a great idea, but what is the idea? It was kind of the Nancy Pelosi during the healthcare debate, vote for it and then you're going to see how wonderful it is. I have a better idea. I like to see the product I'm going to purchase before I sign the check. So I think it's seeing what mayoral control is. At the same time, I'm not opposed to the idea for this one reason, is that I understand that in a city where you have so many elections going on each year, it's difficult to take over one seat. I know it because I'm trying right now. So when you look at if the entire school board or if a majority of that school board is dysfunctional, the challenge of replacing all those individuals in a year or in a couple of years is a huge undertaking for anybody unless you're in that on the right side of the inside. So I think that if you were to eliminate an elected school board and put in an appointed body, it would reduce the number of people that we hold accountable for the product of education that is the city schools. So we would be able to target easier the people that are being held accountable. So we could say, hey, Mr. Mayor, you have failed. We're replacing you. We're bringing somebody in that can accomplish something. So I'm not opposed to it. I don't know what it is from the people that have said that they love it now, but I can see some small benefits to that concept going forward. Does that answer your question? Okay.
It also had to do with other money.
I'm from the Erie County area, and our county executive is, well, we pay like, I don't know what it is in Rochester, but we pay in the range of about 100% of our property taxes goes toward paying Medicaid, this Cadillac of healthcare that we have in New York State. And so much of it is mandated from Albany, while our county executive has made a proposal that the counties take more control over deciding where those, you know, how the funds are dispersed or what have you, and managing, basically being involved in the management or assigning healthcare programs to the residents. I guess I'm wondering, it's our county executive, Chris Conlon, if it seems to be, I mean, I can't give you all the details, but it seems to be a pretty good program that would help sort of release a lot of the burden of just strapping debt.
Absolutely.
And I wonder if you would maybe support the effort to, you know, maybe help put pressure on the county and you know, surrounding.
I know that that's an initiative that Maggie has been working on as well, in the limited knowledge that I do have on that topic and what her initiatives are. I know that she has been pushing for mandate relief to just stop telling me what I have to spend my money on. Let me spend the money locally where I best know it's going to be used. So I know that that's something that, like I said, our county executive, Maggie Brooks, has been working on, and it's something that I would support. I think mandate relief at all levels would be a healthy thing. People that live in your neighborhood or on your block or in your city know better what is needed in that area than somebody halfway across the country or state. So I think anytime we can look at mandate relief in general, we're looking in the right direction. But thank you for the question. Do you mind if I take one more from the gentleman right there? I do have to leave. I have another event to rush off to, and I apologize, but I'd be happy to take.
This is a quick question. I don't know if we have any jurisdiction on it, but I mean, what do you think of the direction as far as Midtown? Because right now it's just a big empty hole. What do you see the direction as far as downtown? And some people want to put a casino. My personal opinion, I don't think it should be a casino because I think it just make things worse. My personal opinion, but I mean, what do you think the solution is of that part?
I'm a good guy to ask that question of because that area lies within my district. I do have that downtown area. And I'm a former Paytech employee. Paytech is really the company that facilitated my ability to come back to Rochester. It had a job ready for me that my skills that I left the Navy with really fit well into. It's also the company that my wife was able to stay in Rochester. She's from Thailand and came here to go to RIT to get her master's degree in graphic design, and they gave her an internship and then hired her on. So I have a lot of love for Paytech. They did a lot to bring my wife and I together. I mean, she's from 8,000 miles away, literally 8,000 miles away. I would have never met her had it not been for our mutual employment. I think, unfortunately, we saw our city government take the intention of a CEO of a private organization, and they ran on that intention. I mean, Arunas was never asked to sign anything, to do anything, to even record his statements. It was more of, here's my intention. Yeah, I'd like to move downtown if everything were perfect. And Tom Richards, at the time, was our corporate counsel, our lead attorney, the person who's supposed to be looking out for us the most, took that intention and ran with it. And with him, so did City Council. And my opponent, Elaine Spall, is another attorney who is of Nixon Peabody ilk, as Tom Richards is, and she was quick to sign on to that. So the people, there was 4 people in the process that were supposed to be looking out for the taxpayers' interest, which were Elaine Spall, Tom Richards, Carla Palumbo, and Lovely Warren, who's unfortunately no longer with us. She took off a little while ago, briefly after Aisha was speaking. But those 4 are attorneys that are on City Council or then corporate council, and they were nowhere to be found when it came to protecting the taxpayers in this deal. So you're right, now we find ourselves in a situation where we've got a whole downtown and we've got 7 acres around it that are going to be clear. I think what has to happen is first of all, we should not be going to the FCC and lobbying them to stop the acquisition of a private organization with another private organization because we failed the plan. That's going to scare business out of Rochester. If nothing else, it's allowing people to say, I don't want to go there because they're bullies. They're bullying a corporation around because they failed to hold up to their intentions. So I think we need to level the playing field and say we welcome businesses of all sizes, be it a 3-man operation or a company of 4,000 or 5,000 people. We welcome you. Let's roll out the red carpet. And that doesn't mean give the city away. It doesn't mean give them everything that they want. It just means give them a solid foundation that they feel confident coming in and building from. To the point of the casino, I can see why some people hate the idea. I can also see where it would help us fill a huge budget gap. And at the end of the day, we can say we don't want a casino in our community, but those dollars are then going to Buffalo and they're going to Syracuse, where that source of entertainment is provided. So do I have to agree with the service that's being provided? In my opinion, I don't have to agree or participate, but what we're doing is we're exporting those dollars out of our city, regionally speaking, and we're doing enough exporting of things that we want to keep here, be it our intellectual property, our young people. I'd hate to see us exporting those dollars out of the community. So I understand the concerns, but at the same time I weigh that against what are we losing by not allowing that to take place in our city.
What about a gun club?
A gun club?
You want to bring Republicans to Rochester, put a
Well, there's one on the
giant
road.
gun club right in the middle of the city.
Gun club at Midtown?
Hey, you know what? At the end of the day,
Lots of target practice.
at the end of the day, if they're not doing something, if it's not an illegal activity,
Grass.
you know, hey, if you want to take your private dollars and bring it in and say, can you please sell me this amount of land, I'd like to build a gun club, why would we not allow that to take place? We need to stop trying to pick and choose who we think are going to be the winners or losers, or picking who we think best fits into our community, because every time Rochester City government seems to pick who they think is going to best fit, a couple of years later, after we've wasted couple million dollars, those people leave, and then somebody else comes in with private money, invests, and then we see some success.
Makes more sense than a theater, which is just going to bring more Democrats to the city.
I dated an actress at one point in my life, and she was a Republican, so there are a few out there.
Nah.
That
All
arts
right.
center, that, it just went by the wayside between the city and the county.
Well, it's because we
Nothing
had,
happened with it.
well, and what happened there is that we had $250 million in checks from the state and federal government, which I'm not for big spending, but it was sitting there in front of us, and city council, all they had to do was say, yes, let it happen, and they voted it down. In my opinion, it was a political decision because it was the Republican Maggie Brooks' idea and her workings, as opposed to Mayor Duffy and the Democrats in the city that put it together. And as soon as they essentially killed that whole Ren Square plan, they turned around and tried to put it all back together in different areas within a few blocks, so that it was their idea. So I think it was an unfortunate handing over of what could have been a nice rebuilding of that block, which I don't think is going to change. I mean, now that the kitty corner, we've got Paytech Pond and the rest of that vacant land, I don't think we're going to see anything.
That's Duffy's legacy.
Unfortunately.
His glass half full.
Well, and unfortunately, it seems that each of our mayors gets to take with them a token of their legacy, be it fast ferries or now holes in downtown. So,
All right.
thank you,
Everyone
everybody.
stay
And
safe.
please, call your friends in the East District and tell them to get out and vote. We got one shot to take this seat. If we're going to bite off a piece of this pie, let's try to bite off a corner. To try to bite off the whole thing is going to be a pretty big feat. So one quarter at a time. This year, we're going to take the east over as long as we get everybody out there to vote and do so on the Republican line. So thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate it.
Good luck, Rich.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And next we have Chris Eads with his coffee.
Hi, I'm Chris Eads. I am running for county legislature in the 25th district, which basically lies between Drew's district and the river on the east side of the city, and it extends downward into the northwest part of Brighton. Am I talking through the mic or not talking through the mic? Is this good?
Either way.
Okay. So, what would I like to do? Well, I've got a pamphlet down there that lists 4 of my main points. It doesn't list some of the more conservative points, but fortunately I'm here to talk to you about those. I'll start with the issue that Drew mentioned, which is the ability to carry guns in the county parks. It's ridiculous. I mean, New York has probably the strictest requirements for concealed carry permits in the entire country, except for Illinois, which doesn't let you do it at all. You know, you go through every kind of background check that the police can do. You go through the mental health check, you know, and you go before a judge that can just deny you basically arbitrarily. It's the good moral character. That's what it says in the law, and that can be anything. You know, he could literally say, well, you were born on a Tuesday, and I believe that that makes you a bad person, so you can't get a permit. So, I mean, if you go through all of that, and you still can't carry in a county park, you can go anywhere else, as Drew was saying, you know, you can walk by, you know, someone's house where their children are playing, but, you know, when you're in a county park where someone could be waiting around the next bend, someone could be hiding behind a tree, you know, waiting to rob you, that's where you can't carry. And, you know, there's just this summer, I heard of at least 3 robberies in the county parks. There could have been more that I just didn't hear about. So there's clearly a problem. And every year, the Republicans promise that they're going to do something about it. You know, the Democrats put this ban in 93 or 94 at the height of the gun control thing that was sweeping the country under the Clinton administration. And ever since then, the Republicans have been saying, yeah, we're going to repeal it, but it's never a good year. You know, the Democrats are going to use this against us, you know, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, they promised they're going to repeal it again this year. They said, you know, right after the election, give us some talking points, because I happen to be chairman of for Monroe County for the Shooters Committee on Political Education, which is, you know, our local pro-gun group upstate. So they say, you know, give us talking points. We're going to do it this year for real. And I certainly hope they will, because I'm not giving this issue a rest, and Drew isn't giving this issue a rest, and Max Kessler, who's running as a Libertarian in the 27th County Legislative District, is not going to give this issue a rest. So hopefully the Republicans will realize that the easiest and safest thing to do is just to finally pass the bill. On the issue of taxes, I'm not raising them. I'm looking to cut them. You know, it's just to give you, you know, guns good, taxes bad. You know, it's my basic litmus test on all of this. That being said, I'd also like to touch on a few of the points that are mentioned in the pamphlet. The first is transparency. You know, I'm tired of the backroom deals. You know, when I'm elected as county legislator, every time I take a vote, I'm going to post that on my website, and I'm going to give people the reasons that I did it on the website. And hopefully, you know, that will inspire the other county legislators to be more transparent and to explain their reasoning, and not just to go meet somewhere and then, you know, file into the meeting as Rich was talking about with City Council, and just, you know, here's the vote. Because, you know, the Democrats can scream and holler about Upstate Telecommunications Corporation all they want, but the vote was unanimous with no debate. So they were all just as complicit as the Republicans in taking that money. So, what else is in there? In terms of being a public servant, well, first of all, I'm going to work overtime. So, you know, it's a part-time position. but, you know, not everybody can get down to the office at 9 to 5. So I'm going to be, every weekend on a Saturday or Sunday, I'm going to go out in the community to churches, to farmers markets, community centers, right here. And I'm going to be holding meetings where anyone could come and ask me questions and tell me what's on their mind. And if you do come to my office, what you're going to notice is that the best chair is not behind the desk. It's in the front of the desk where the boss sits, which are going to be my constituents. And I'll have a metal folding chair where I sit behind the desk. So if I ever get tempted to forget, you know, who's the boss, who's the servant, I'll be reminded of it every day. So, thank you. Thank you, yes. It's,
One of these, Chris.
yeah, those are nice. Look, I could deal with one of those. I was
Could
actually
I-
visiting kind of a brown folding chair.
I don't know if I jumped ahead, but I did want, and what made you want to run, I guess, for office? Can I ask, you know?
What
Yeah,
party
pretty
are
much
you
my
running
question.
on right now? Are you, what's your party line?
Green Party line.
Okay.
So you don't have to hug a tree. Actually, you know, the Green Party and the Libertarian Party, we both face many of the same challenges. The whole, you know, Don Quixote riding against the wind kind of thing. So, you know, you know, I would have had like 600 signatures going door to door because no one knows what county legislative district they're in. So I can't go down to the, you know, public market and get signatures that way. And it would have, you know, it would have been a huge hassle. And, you know, Democrats were sure to challenge me because the guy they're running right now was, the current incumbent was appointed by the Democratic caucus of the county legislature after Joe Morelli wrote them a letter saying, you know, this is my guy. But he doesn't really have that much experience. The Greens, you know, want to take Morelli out and get rid of him just as much as we do at the Libertarian Party, which has also endorsed me. And so that's why I'm on the ballot as a Green Party. Now, as to why I wanted to run for office, well, I don't think we have a good government. I don't think we have a good government on the federal level. I don't think we have a good government on the state level. I don't think we have a good government on the city level. The county, you know, not as bad. I think we've you know, I can't blame the Republicans for too much, although I think that they have their share of the scandals here. You know, upstate telecommunications, and Robush Rod, things like that. But in any case, you know, there's a political machine that controls everything here in the city. You know, whether it's the county legislative districts in the city, whether it's school board, whether it's city council, whether it's the mayor, whether it's city court judge. I'm 32, and the Democrats have won every single election for every single office in the city, you know, since before I was born. And it's got to change. And, you know, I ran for city council in 2005, I didn't win. I ran for school board in 2007 and 2009, I didn't win, but I did pretty good. And so did a couple other people, and maybe that might have played a role in the whole mayoral control thing, as they were thinking, oh no, somebody might actually beat us. But this year, I'm running in the city for a county legislator, and I think I have a pretty good chance, and quite frankly, my opponent has done very little campaigning that I can see. He doesn't have a website. Just go look at the candidate free airtime that WXXI has given us as an opportunity to get our message out. And you can see that he just kind of rambles. So I think, you know, I think that this is a good opportunity. I look forward to winning, to beating this guy, to knocking Joe Morelli down a notch, and then hopefully, you know, people will step forward from the sidelines and realize that the political machine can be beaten, that Joe Morelli and David Gant are not these you know, supermen that just pull all the strings in the city, and we'll get some momentum to break the grip of the Democratic Party's political machine in the city once and for all. So that's why I'm running. Let's see.
Was there any other questions?
So you're really more libertarian minded than Green Party minded?
Yeah. I mean, it's.
You shouldn't be saying that on
I
camera.
want a small government, you know,
Right.
and you know, I'm not opposed. You know, I went to the Green Party's website and I looked at their 10 principles, and I talked to them. They didn't just give me a free pass. And I said, well, you know, I think your 10 principles can be implemented without big government. You know, I don't have a problem with, you know, people having, you know, food to eat and a roof over their head, but I think it's going to be more easily achieved by voluntary methods. It's going to be more easily achieved if we increase the wealth that's available by cutting taxes and regulations. You know, I mean, you look at something like social justice. Well, of course I believe in justice. You know, who doesn't believe in justice? But, you know, that's not to
I don't
say
think that's what they mean.
justice comes from having the government take money from people who work and give it to people who don't work. You know, I don't believe that that's justice. You know, so I mean, I agree in principle with what they believe, and you know, when I talked to them, I said, you know, let me show you how we can do this without big government. And you know, it doesn't say that on the pamphlets, but those pamphlets are actually printed on tree-free paper made from 70% sugarcane and 30% bamboo, which, you know, grow a lot faster than trees. And, you know, that's one of the examples I've shown them. You know, we can save the trees. We don't have to pass a law. We don't have to tell people what to do. You know, I found that at CVS. It's not hard to find. Just go buy paper that's not made from trees. You know, obviously it prints just fine. I printed double-sided, so I was able to feed it through my printer and then feed it through, you know, the other way. So it can print on the second side. It works just as well. And, you know, nobody had to pass a law or, you know, make it illegal to cut down a tree. So, does that answer your
Oh,
question?
hey, no, it's,
Cool.
I'd vote for you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? All right, well, thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much. All right, I just want to thank you all for coming out. If you want to stay, there's still some refreshments. If you have any questions for anyone, Christopher is still here. If you have any questions for us, let me know. And again, if you wanted to get tickets for the Star Parker, take some posters for our next event that you can put up around, we'd love to have it, and have you do that. And I'm just going to end in prayer as well, if that's okay. Thank you, Lord, for this time that we've been able to have these candidates come out and share their hearts. We thank you for giving us the opportunity to hear them. May we go away with wisdom so that we may discern from candidate to candidate and being able to vote our values that are important to us. And we thank you for giving everyone a wonderful traveling mercies on the way home. May everyone be safe. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.